Hey guys, Scott here. I don't like making videos like this. I like my videos to be as unbiased as possible, or at least devil's advocate for both sides, and try to get a balanced discussion here. I honestly think people that are one-sided are a plague upon DBD's community in general, and I even have like the caustic opinion that if you do not play both sides at least a little bit, you shouldn't even get to have an opinion on the game's balance. You can still have an opinion on the game, it being fun and whatever, as long as it doesn't involve making changes to the game balance-wise, that's fine. But I really think if you don't play both sides, you shouldn't get to have an opinion on the game's balance, because you cannot possibly understand what both sides are going through unless you experience it yourself. You just can't. So I don't like making us versus them one-sided videos. It's annoying. But I do feel like lately I am really kind of sick of Survivor shit. I am feeling very killer-sided lately, and I wanted to go over where does this end, because it feels like there's constantly been a carrot dangling in front of survivors, and the carrot doesn't really seem to be satiating anybody because it's not changing the issues of people disconnecting, giving up on first hit. Anything unfortunate happens within the first minute of the match, I just stop playing the game entirely. Now, it's kind of interesting because Survivor entitlement is just straight up more common than killer entitlement. And a lot of that is because there's just 4 times as many survivors in a game as killers. So you're 4 times as likely to see a survivor give up, not play the game, just, try to kill themselves or just run in a corner, do nothing, anything to just abstain from actually playing the game. You're more likely to see it because there's just simply more of them. That being said, I don't even think it's like a 1-to-1 ratio like that. If it were equal, it would be like 4-to-1, right? So it would be 4 survivors for every 1 killer that feels entitled and gives up during the match. But I feel like it's more like 8-to-1. I feel like survivors give up at a rate significantly higher than killer that doesn't account for the asymmetrical nature of that balance. So a lot of that is due to, I don't even know anymore. Like, a long time ago, I used to understand and frankly even advocate for giving up or just DCing and stuff back in the day. This was when there was stuff like the original Legion, which if you didn't advocate DCing against the original Legion, my only response to you is you must not have known what original Legion was, because it's just there's no game. You didn't get to do anything. So that was an especially egregious, ridiculous thing that no one should ever have to play it against, and then they eventually changed it because it was just insanely busted. The only other thing that I remember saying that it was okay to DC against was Skull Merchants, the original Skull Merchants, intentionally going for server lockouts, doing an hour-long 3-gen, back before there were 3-gen protections and things like that. That I felt, I'm sorry, Timmy coming home from work after working 62 hours should not have to sit in an hour-long match because some guy's a masochist and just wants to, or I guess a sadist rather, and just wants to just torture people by keeping them in a match, because no one did hour-long server lockout Skull Merchant matches because they were just really trying to win. They did it to torture people. And so those are the 2 things where I was like, okay, you should be able to not have to play against that. But there hasn't been anything remotely that broken in the game for years and years now. So my question is how much do survivors need before we stop seeing this? Because it seems like I said, there's a carrot that's been dangled in front of them, and they keep getting buffs and buffs and buffs and buffs, and it still keeps happening. Like lately, we just had the pallet density changes, one of the biggest nerfs to killer in recent memory. It really heavily impacts a lot of killers. I have felt it. A lot of other killers have felt it. There are a lot more pallets. Even if all of them aren't super great, there's still a lot more to chain together, and in the hands of a good player, chasing people with an M1 killer now has become significantly harder. So killers got nerfed with that, but I'm still seeing disconnects every 2 or 3 games in the exact same way without tunneling or camping. I just hit a guy, or a zombie hits a guy, or I lose Lethal Pursuer and get a quick hit at the start, whatever. There's still every single game, or every other game, someone that just feels entitled to that, oh, this wasn't fun for me, so I'm out. So that's still happening, even with the changes that just nerfed killer. And next patch, we're going to get even more insanely strong survivor buffs, and killer, again, is not really getting anything. They're getting jack shit. I guess some more blood points. That's nice. But for the most part, survivors are getting massively buffed. They now have adamantium armor after unhook, and tunneling is being severely nerfed, and proxy camping is being nerfed, and slugging is being nerfed. Which, a lot of these things I do think are bad for the health of the game, and having some adjustments there is fine. But, dude, my worry is, with the pallet density changes, it's still happening. What if with all these buffs, it still happens? I actually think even with all these changes, we're still going to have people that feel like it's just not enough. And then you have to draw the line somewhere. I understand, getting face camped to death by a Bubba that needed fixing, and it got fixed and stuff like that. I understand being slugged for 4 minutes to death probably needs fixing and stuff like that, but we're getting to the point where I'm like, okay, they're basically fixing almost everything that there is a problem with in Survivor. And even solo queue is getting buffs with the unhook bar that gives you sort of a base kit kindred effect. Solo queue Survivor has gotten numerous buffs over the years with the UI and things like that. So they're even making the worst side of Survivor, solo queue, they're making that better as well. And trust me, I get it. I pretty much only play solo queue. I understand how miserable solo queue can be. But you guys that are complaining about solo queue, you guys got to realize most of the time what you're complaining about is your teammates. You're not even complaining about the game, but then people want the game to be easier when really it's your teammates and matchmaking that's the problem. So we have a disjointed request from survivors that are entitled, and they're not even trying to fix the correct thing. It's really, you're just getting shitty teammates, and that's why you're losing. It's not because there's just not enough pallets or anything like that. It's just usually because your team is bad, because the matchmaking is bad, and then people go, well, that means the game needs to be easier. But that's not your issue. So that's one of the main problems here. They're not focusing on the correct thing to complain about, which is mostly, and forever will be probably, the matchmaking itself. Now, the reason that's basically never going to be fixed is because the escapes set your MMR. That's the only thing that matters. And as everyone knows, just escaping does not dictate whether or not you are good at Survivor. For killers, it being based solely on kills is a lot more reasonable because you kill everyone, you're typically doing well. But if you get chased for 5 gens and then die, the game still thinks you're worse. So the matchmaking is just doomed to fail. And then a lot of solo queue players attribute that to why the game is so bad. But the game, in terms of balance, is fine. Survivors, in my opinion, now, you got enough shit. You guys are fine now. Yes, having bad teammates can sully the whole experience. I understand that. But you realize you're not complaining about the balance of the game itself. But we keep getting nerfs to killer like the game itself. That's the disjointed thing that's leading to so many issues here. So I don't really know where this whole thing is going to end. I do really think it's got to stop at some point, right? Because eventually we're going to get to a point where if survivors are still not happy, they're still not happy, they get more and more and more, and they're still not happy, eventually we're going to get to a point where killers are just simply not going to play the weak killers or mid-tier killers anymore, because everybody enjoys winning. Losing every once in a while, no big deal. It's not going to ruin your day or anything like that. But if you lose and lose and lose and lose and lose and lose because you're playing Pig or, one of the other 27 killers or whatever that are frankly not good enough to compete anymore with a lot of these map changes, then what we're going to have is negative reinforcement leads to a desire to remove that negative reinforcement, which means you're just only going to see like the top 5 or 6 killers for the rest of the game's lifespan, because people will eventually reach a boiling point where they can't handle losing anymore. And I'm not saying it's impossible to win with Peg or anything like that. I'm just saying it's being made disproportionately harder to do so in such a way that doesn't reflect the problem of the game itself, which is the matchmaking, not the actual balance of maps and killers and things like that. Obviously, there's still a few annoying things on killers, and some of the top tiers are still extremely oppressive in the right scenarios, but the game as a whole right now is shifting to just 100% being survivor-sided. I would love to see the kill rates from like the month or two before they added the pallet density changes to right now. I would love to see that because I can guarantee they have gone down. I know my kill rates have gone down, not super significantly. It's not like I can't win anymore or anything like that, but I have noticed it's gotten harder for sure for me to win, especially with not like, a top 5 or 6 killer. And that's, I think, okay, but it should come with survivors finally going, okay, the game is fair now. We're not going to DC for every little thing, but it hasn't. And that's why it's so frustrating. They keep getting more and more things, but it seems to never be enough. And I'm really worried that next patch, we're just going to have possibly the biggest buff survivors have gotten as a blanket, not involving perks, just generic base changes to the game. One of the biggest buffs they've gotten in recent memory. And I think we're still going to have the exact same shit. We're still going to have people getting hit in the first 30 seconds of the match and giving up. And I don't know how to fix it anymore. The problem, I think, is matchmaking. Matchmaking, you need to have good matchmaking to have teammates that are your skill level and killers that are your skill level. And I think that alleviates a lot of these issues. But until that's fixed, I think people are just telling behavior and complaining about the wrong things here. And that is going to result in an endless loop where killers are relegated to only playing the best killers, which makes survivors more upset, which makes them more entitled, which makes them ask for more, which makes more changes to buff survivors happen, which makes more killers only play the top 4 killers now than the top 3 killers. Before long, it's just Nurse and Blight. And like, it's just... You see the death spiral I'm talking about here. There has to be a line in the sand drawn. And I'm not saying every survivor is entitled. I would say probably not even half of them are entitled. Most of them are just fine. But it's just too much. It's too much now. I feel like there's nothing I can do. Even if I play super nice, I get 2 hooks on everybody. Someone's still fucking bitching in endgame chat. Someone's still just complaining or DCing or giving up or just killing themselves. And I'm sick of it. Where does it end? I'm annoyed that I have to be one-sided here, but it's got to stop.